It was the wedding of the year, beautifully decorated with the scent of fresh flowers filling the air. The laughter of friends and family echoed through the grand hall, creating the perfect atmosphere for a celebration of love. But just as the groom reached for the bride's hand to say, "I do," a piercing voice cut through the perfect moment. It wasn't a jealous ex, an objection from the crowd, or a mistake in the ceremony. It was his own daughter, standing up with tears in her eyes, determined to stop the wedding. What could push a young girl to go against her father on the most important day of his life? What shocking truth was about to be revealed? The music stopped. "The bride frotze." The guests turned to look, their faces filled with shock. And there, standing in the aisle, was Emma, only 12 years old, trembling but determined. She said the words that would change everything. "Dad, you can't marry her." The room fell silent. Isabella's radiant smile faltered for a fraction of a second before she quickly masked it with confusion. Mason, standing at the altar, blinked in disbelief. The joy on his face melted into worry as he looked at his daughter. His voice broke the silence, filled with concern. "What's going on?" The little girl's chest rose and fell as she tried to steady her breathing. Her fists were clenched, her small frame trembling. She turned to face her father, her eyes wide with fear and resolve. "You can't marry her, Daddy. She's not who you think she is." The words hung in the air like a thunderclap. Guests whispered among themselves, their curiosity and unease spreading like wildfire. Isabella, dressed in her pristine white gown, took a small step forward. Her voice, laced with feigned sweetness, broke the tension. "Emma," she said softly, "what's wrong, darling? Did something happen?" In just a few minutes, this wedding would go from the happiest day of a father's life to the most chaotic, life-changing moment he could never have imagined. Emma was the only one who knew. She was the only one who saw what her dad was too blind to recognize. It was eating away at her, the feeling that something was off. She didn't want to believe it. She didn't want to ruin his happiness. But the truth was undeniable, and it was about to come out. What should she do? Should she stay silent and let her father marry a woman who isn't who she says she is? Or would she risk it all to expose the truth, no matter the cost? The tension in the room was unbearable. Mason's hands clenched at his sides as he looked between his daughter and his bride-to-be. Isabella's calm exterior was beginning to crack, and the guests could feel it. Something wasn't right. This was supposed to be the happiest day of Mason's life, a day filled with love and new beginnings, but Emma's words had turned it into something entirely different. The truth was about to be exposed. How did we get here? How did a 12-year-old girl uncover a truth so shocking that no one else could see it? What led to this moment, where a child's courage was the only thing standing between her father and a devastating mistake? This is the story of Emma, a girl who loved her father too much to stay silent. A little girl who saw what no one else did. And a little girl who, in one brave moment, stopped a wedding and changed everything. Mason, a well-loved businessman, a widower, and a father, had finally found love again after years of heartbreak. His daughter, 12-year-old Emma, was the center of his world. They'd been through thick and thin together after losing his wife, her mother, to an illness that left a permanent void in their hearts. Emma was only 5 years old when her mother passed away. Her memories of her mother were faint, a warm smile, a soft voice singing her lullabies, and the scent of lavender that always seemed to linger wherever she went. After her mother's death, it had just been Emma and her father, Mason. Mason did his best to raise Emma on his own. He worked long hours to provide for her, but he never let his job keep him from being present. He was there for every scraped knee, every bedtime story, and every school recital. To Emma, he wasn't just her dad, he was her whole world. But as much as Mason loved his daughter, there was a sadness in him that even Emma could see. It was in the way he sat quietly at the dinner table after she had gone to bed, the way he looked at old photos of her mother when he thought no one was watching. He was lonely, and Emma knew it. One day, Mason met Isabella at a charity gala. After a while, He introduced her to Emma as his new love. When Isabella came into their lives, everything seemed to change for Mason. Isabella seemed like a blessing, beautiful, charming, and kind, or so she appeared. She entered their lives when Mason was at his loneliest. She offered warmth, companionship, and a seemingly genuine love for both Mason and Emma. But appearances can be deceiving. Emma believed Isabella was the best thing that had ever happened to her and her father since the death of her mom. Isabella was beautiful, poised, and kind. She had a way of making people feel special, like they were the only ones in the room. When she smiled at Mason, he felt something he hadn't felt in years: hope. Isabella quickly became a regular presence in their lives. She brought warmth and laughter back into their home, and for the first time in a long while, Emma saw her father smile. Isabella didn't just make Mason happy, she made Emma feel special too. She would bake cookies with her, help her with her homework, and tell her how lucky she was to have such a wonderful father. For a little girl who had grown up without a mother, Isabella seemed like a dream come true. Emma began to think of her as the mother she had always wished for. She started imagining what life would be like when Isabella officially became part of their family. Trips to the park, family movie nights, and bedtime stories just like the ones her mom used to tell her. But the dream didn't last. At first, the changes were subtle. Isabella's sweet demeanor would shift when Mason wasn't around. Her patience wore thin, and her kind words were replaced with sharp commands. If Emma left her toys in the living room, Isabella would snap at her to clean them up. If she spilled her drink at dinner, Isabella's eyes would narrow with annoyance. "You're old enough to know better," Isabella would say coldly. "Do you want your father to think you're a spoiled brat?" Emma didn't understand why Isabella was so different when her father wasn't there. She tried harder to be good, to make Isabella happy, but nothing seemed to work. The more time passed, the colder Isabella became. Behind closed doors, Isabella showed a darker side. She would scold Emma over the smallest things, criticizing her for how she looked or how she acted. "You'll never grow up to be anything if you keep acting like a brat," Isabella sneered one evening when Mason was at work. But it didn't stop there. Isabella's anger came with threats. "If you tell your dad what I say to you, I'll make sure he never believes you. He loves me more than you think, and I'll make sure you're out of this house for good," Isabella hissed, her voice sharp as a knife. Then came the threats. One evening, when Emma accidentally knocked over a vase while playing, Isabella grabbed her arm and pulled her close. Her voice was low and menacing as she hissed, "Do you know how much that cost? If you ever tell your father how I talked to you, you'll regret it. Do you understand me?" Emma's eyes filled with tears, but she nodded. She was too scared to do anything else. From that moment on, Emma began to see Isabella for who she really was. The kind, loving woman who had won her father's heart was a lie. Behind closed doors, Isabella was someone else entirely, someone who was cruel, controlling, and manipulative. Emma didn't know what to do. She loved her dad and didn't want to ruin his happiness. She stayed silent, thinking maybe Isabella would change. But things only got worse. Isabella wasn't just mean, she was dangerous. And Emma would soon discover just how far Isabella was willing to go to get what she wanted. Isabella's behavior toward Emma grew worse with every passing week. What started as cold remarks and veiled threats turned into something far more sinister. When Mason was home, Isabella was the picture of grace, sweet to Emma, laughing at his jokes, and talking about how much she loved their little family. But the moment he left for work, the mask slipped. One day, Emma accidentally spilled a glass of water on the kitchen counter. Isabella's patience snapped. "What's wrong with you?" she hissed, grabbing a towel to mop up the spill.
"Kent u da anything right?"
"I'm sorry," Emma mumbled, her cheeks burning with embarrassment. "Sorry doesn't fix it," Isabella snapped, throwing the wet towel into the sink. She turned to face Emma, her eyes cold. "You're lucky your father wasn't here to see this. He'd be so disappointed." The real trouble started one evening when Mason had to work late. Emma was sitting in the living room, drawing pictures of her family, her dad, herself, and Isabella. She was trying to convince herself that things weren't as bad as they seemed, that maybe she just needed to try harder to get along with Isabella.
Isabella walked in. Her heels clicking against the wooden floor.
She glanced at Emma's drawing and frowned. "What are you doing?" she asked.
"I'm drawing US," Emma said softly, holding up the picture.
Isabella snatched the paper from her hands, her lips curling into a sneer. "This doesn't look like us."
"You made him look like a monster." Emma's eyes widened.
"No, I didn't. I just—" "Enough," Isabella said, her voice low and sharp. She tore the drawing in half and tossed it onto the floor.
"Let me make something clear, Emma.
I'm going to marry your father, and when I do, things are going to change around here.
Do you understand me?"
Emma felt a chill run down her spine. She nodded, tears streaming down her face.
"Yes."
"Good," Isabella said, straightening up. "Now clean up this mess before your father gets home. I don't want him seeing you like this." After that night, Emma tried her best to stay out of Isabella's way. She avoided her whenever she could, spending most of her time in her room or outside in the backyard. The weeks leading up to the wedding were a nightmare for Emma. Isabella's behavior grew colder and more manipulative. But then, something happened that changed everything. One night, while Isabella thought Emma was asleep, Emma overheard a conversation. Isabella was on the phone in the kitchen, her voice low and urgent. "No, he doesn't suspect anything," Isabella said. "Just stick to the plan. Once the wedding is over, we'll have access to everything, the accounts, the business, all of it." Emma's heart pounded in her chest. She didn't understand everything Isabella was saying, but she understood enough. Isabella wasn't just mean or controlling, she was dangerous. And she was planning something that could ruin her father's life. Emma knew she couldn't stay silent anymore. She had to stop the wedding. But how? How could a 12-year-old girl convince her father that the woman he loved was not who everyone thought she was? Emma decided to start watching Isabella, hoping to find evidence to show her dad. But unfortunately, Isabella knew Emma was watching her. She knew the little girl was sharper than most people gave her credit for. Emma's presence was a problem, a threat to the smooth execution of her plan. Isabella had spent months carefully weaving her web, gaining Mason's trust, charming his friends, and inserting herself into every corner of his life. Isabella knew that as long as Emma was around, her plans would always be in jeopardy. That's when Isabella decided Emma needed to go. Isabella decided to send Emma off to a boarding school. She needed to make sure Mason believed it was the right decision. She needed him to feel like he had no other choice, and that meant framing Emma for something big, something that would convince Mason that his daughter was acting out and needed structure.
It happened on a quiet afternoon.
Isabella had been humming to herself, organizing some of her jewelry in the bedroom when she called Emma in. "Sweetheart," Isabella said, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. "Can you help me with something?" Emma, wary of Isabella but unwilling to disobey, stepped inside.
"What is it?"
"I need you to hold on to this for me," Isabella said, handing Emma a velvet jewelry pouch. "Just for a minute while I finish sorting these." Emma took the pouch without a second thought and stood there quietly, waiting for Isabella to finish. But Isabella seemed to take her time. After a few minutes, Emma asked, "Can I put this down now?" "Of course," Isabella said, smiling.
"Just set it on the dresser. Thank you, sweetheart."
Relieved, Emma placed the pouch on the dresser and walked back to her room, happy to be away from Isabella. But what she didn't know was that Isabella wasn't done. Later that evening, Isabella stormed into the living room, her face a mask of shock and betrayal. "Mason!" she cried, clutching the empty jewelry pouch in her hand.
"Something's missing."
"My necklace, the one you gave me. It's gone." Mason looked up from his book, alarmed. "Gone?
What do you mean?"
"I just had it this afternoon," Isabella said, her voice trembling. I don't want to accuse anyone, but I think Emma was the last person who had it." Emma, who had been sitting quietly on the couch, froze. "I didn't take anything," she said, her voice rising with panic. "She asked me to hold it, but I gave it back." "Is that true, Emma?" Mason asked, his brow furrowing. "Yes, I swear."
Emma kriet, tears welling up in her eyes.
"I didn't take anything." But Isabella's tears were more convincing. "Mason, I don't want to believe she'd do something like this, but maybe she's struggling more than we realized. Maybe she needs help, structure." Mason sighed heavily, running a hand through his hair.
"Emma, this is serious.
"If you did take it, you need to tell me now." "I didn't." Emma cried.
"She's lying."
"I didn't do anything." Isabella dug through Emma's backpack and found the necklace hidden inside. Emma's protests fell on deaf ears. "Dad, I didn't do it, I swear." Emma cried, but Isabella's tears and accusations drowned her out. "Mason, maybe we should think about sending her to boarding school," Isabella said, her lips tightening. "At least for a little while. It might give her the discipline and stability she needs." That night, Emma sat in her room, tears streaming down her face. She couldn't believe what was happening. Isabella had framed her. She was sure of it. But how could she make her father see that? He had looked so disappointed, so unsure of what to believe. The next morning, Mason sat down with Emma at the kitchen table, his expression soft but serious. "Emma, we need to talk," he said. Emma looked up at him, her eyes red from crying. "Daddy, I didn't do it," she whispered. "I didn't take anything." Mason sighed and reached for her hand.
"Sweetheart, I want to believe you."
"I really do. But Isabella wouldn't lie about something like this. We both saw the necklace in your backpack. I know it's been hard for you to adjust to having her in our lives, and I know you miss your mom, but I think maybe this is part of the problem."
"What do you mean?"
Emma asked, her voice trembling. "I think Isabella is right," Mason said gently. "Maybe some time away would help you adjust. Boarding school isn't a punishment, Emma. It's a chance for you to grow and learn." Emma pulled her hand away, her heartbreak evident. "You're sending me away," she said, her voice cracking. "Because of her." "It's not because of her," Mason said quickly. "It's because I want what's best for you. I know it's hard now, but you'll see. This will be good for all of us." That evening, Emma decided she couldn't stay silent anymore. She had to tell her father the truth, not just about the stolen necklace, but about everything Isabella had done. She waited until Isabella was out of the house, then found Mason in his study. "Daddy," she said, her voice trembling.
"I need to talk to you."
Mason looked up from his paperwork and smiled softly.
"What is it, sweetheart?"
Emma hesitated, her heart pounding. "It's about Isabella." Mason's expression shifted, a hint of frustration flickering across his face. "Emma, we've talked about this. You need to give her a chance." "No, Daddy, listen," Emma said, her voice rising with desperation. "She's not who you think she is. She's been mean to me when you're not around. She yells at me, and she said if I told you, you wouldn't believe me. She framed me for the necklace." Mason frowned, leaning back in his chair. "Emma, I know this has been hard for you, but you're letting your imagination get the best of you."
"Isabella loves you, and she loves me."
"She's trying her best to make this work."
"She doesn't love me."
Emma cried.
"She's pretending."
"She's only doing this to get what she wants." "Emma, enough," Mason said firmly.
"You're a smart girl, but you're still a child."
"You don't understand how complicated things can be. Isabella has done nothing but try to make you feel welcome. You need to give her a chance."
Emma's heart shattered.
She wanted to scream to make him see the truth, but the look on his face told her it was no use. He wouldn't believe her, not yet. Emma needed undeniable proof that Isabella wasn't just bad news, she was dangerous. The following day, Emma was cleaning her room when Isabella's phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. Emma glanced at it, curiosity gnawing at her. Isabella always kept her phone close, almost as if she were afraid someone might see what was on it. But today, she had left it behind. Emma hesitated, her heart pounding. She knew it was wrong to snoop, but she couldn't ignore the nagging feeling in her chest. This might be her only chance to find out what Isabella was hiding. With trembling hands, Emma picked up the phone and unlocked it using the pattern she had secretly memorized. She scrolled through the messages and froze when she saw a name she didn't recognize, William. Emma's hands trembled as she scrolled through Isabella's phone. She had seen Isabella hide her phone countless times, quickly tucking it away whenever her father walked into the room. But now, for the first time, Emma was holding it. And what she found would change everything. William's messages were direct, almost commanding. He mentioned something about signing papers before the wedding and gaining full control of the accounts. Emma didn't understand everything, but she recognized her father's name in the conversation. They were talking about her dad's money and business. Then came Isabella's response. Her words were cold and calculating as she assured William that everything was going smoothly, that Mason trusted her completely. Emma's stomach twisted as she read Isabella's confident declaration. He's so blinded by love, he'll sign anything I put in front of him. Emma's eyes widened as she scrolled further. The conversation wasn't just about money, it was about something much worse. Isabella told William not to worry, saying she already had the poison ready, and the plan would be executed after the wedding. Poison. The word echoed in Emma's mind like a thunderclap. She read the message over and over, hoping she had misunderstood, but there it was, clear as day. Isabella was planning to get rid of her father. The poison would be used during the honeymoon when no one would suspect foul play. As if that weren't enough, Emma uncovered another horrifying truth. William wasn't just an accomplice, he was something more. The way Isabella spoke to him in the messages, the playful tone, the teasing remarks, revealed the truth. Isabella and William weren't just partners in crime, they were lovers. Emma went straight to the photos on the phone, hoping to find something that would confirm what she already suspected. Her heart sank as she opened the gallery. There they were, dozens of photos of Isabella and William. Some were casual, like selfies taken at a restaurant or in a car. Others were more intimate, showing them holding hands or laughing together. One photo, taken in what looked like a hotel room, showed William with his arm around Isabella's waist. The two of them were smiling at the camera, like they didn't have a care in the world. Emma's stomach turned. She had always suspected that Isabella didn't truly love her father, but seeing the proof was worse than she could have imagined. Isabella wasn't just lying to Mason, she was betraying him in the worst possible way. Emma's breath hitched as she pieced it all together. Isabella was using her father, pretending to love him while secretly plotting to take everything he had. And William? He was helping her execute the plan. They were both working for Mason's business competitors, the very people who wanted him out of the picture for good. It was all too much for Emma to process. The woman who had been smiling at her father just moments ago, who had been playing the role of the loving fiancé, was nothing more than a fraud. Isabella wasn't just after the money, she was after Mason's life. The messages painted a chilling picture. Isabella had orchestrated everything from the moment she met Mason. She had carefully gained his trust, playing the part of the perfect partner while secretly planning his downfall. She had been hired by Mason's competitors to sabotage him, and now, with the wedding only days away, her plan was nearly complete. But Isabella wasn't working alone. William, her lover and accomplice, had been coordinating with her from the start. He was the one managing the financial side of things, ensuring that once Mason was gone, Isabella could transfer everything, the money, the business, the assets, into their hands. Emma felt sick. The man she loved most in the world was being manipulated, betrayed, and targeted for something far worse than heartbreak. And the woman behind it all was right there in their home, pretending to be part of their family. Emma quickly uploaded all she discovered to a USB drive, including recordings of a silent call Isabella had taken when she thought everyone was asleep. For Emma, the discovery was both terrifying and heartbreaking. She had always hoped Isabella's cruelty was something she could endure, something that would fade over time. But this was different. This wasn't about hurt feelings or sharp words. This was about life and death. She wanted to run to her father, to shake him, and scream the truth until he believed her. But she knew she couldn't, not yet. Isabella was too clever, too manipulative. If Emma confronted her now, Isabella would twist the story just like she always did. Emma needed more than just words. She needed a way to prove, without a shadow of a doubt, that Isabella wasn't who she claimed to be. Emma clenched her fists, determination hardening her resolve. She couldn't let her father marry Isabella. She couldn't let him sign away his life, literally and figuratively, to a woman who had no intention of loving him. But how could she stop it? How could a 12-year-old girl stand up against a woman like Isabella? The following days felt like a blur for Emma. Every moment she spent in the same house as Isabella was unbearable. Every time Isabella smiled at her father, pretending to be the perfect fiancé, Emma's stomach churned. But what made it worse was the weight of the truth, the secrets she now carried. Isabella wasn't just mean. She wasn't just manipulative. She was a cold-hearted liar, a thief, and worst of all, a murderer in waiting. Emma knew she had to stop her, but how? Isabella was clever, always 10 steps ahead. Emma couldn't just tell her father. She tried that before, and he hadn't believed her. Isabella's web of lies was too strong, too convincing. But Emma wasn't going to give up. She was her father's daughter, and she wasn't going to let him walk blindly into a trap. She had one goal now, to expose Isabella for who she really was. And she would do whatever it took. Emma knew the poison was real. She had seen it mentioned in Isabella's messages to William. But she didn't know where it was or how Isabella planned to use it. She decided to search the house, starting with Isabella's room. It was a risky move, but Emma knew she had to take the chance. Late one night, after Isabella and Mason had gone to bed, Emma crept into Isabella's room. Her heart pounded in her chest as she opened the closet door and began searching through the shelves. Most of it was what she expected: clothes, shoes, and a neatly organized row of purses. But then, in the back of the closet, hidden behind a stack of shoeboxes, Emma found a small unmarked bottle. Her hands trembled as she held it up to the light. The liquid inside was clear, almost ordinary looking. But Emma knew better. This was it. The poison Isabella was planning to use on her father. The thought made her stomach turn. How could anyone be so evil? How could someone smile and laugh with a man while secretly planning to get rid of him? Emma put the bottle back exactly where she found it, careful not to leave any trace of her presence. She had what she needed now: the messages, the pictures, the poison. It was all coming together. But she still needed a plan. How could she reveal everything in a way that left no room for Isabella to twist the truth? With the wedding just days away, Emma knew she had to act fast. She couldn't let Isabella carry out her plans. She couldn't let her father marry a woman who didn't love him, who was planning to poison him and take everything he had. But Emma also knew that simply telling her father wouldn't be enough. Isabella was too good at lying, too good at making people believe her. Emma needed a way to expose her in front of everyone. The wedding would be the perfect opportunity, she thought to herself. Everyone would be there: friends, family, even some of Mason's business partners. If Emma could reveal the truth in front of all those people, Isabella wouldn't be able to deny it. The lies would unravel. She wrote down everything she had heard and seen, organizing it in a way that even the most skeptical person couldn't ignore. The night before the wedding, Isabella was in an unusually good mood. She hummed to herself as she set out her dress and talked about how excited she was to finally become a real family. Emma stayed quiet, sitting at the dinner table with her father and Isabella, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "Are you excited for tomorrow, Emma?" Isabella asked, her smile as fake as ever. Emma looked up, forcing herself to meet Isabella's gaze. "Yes," she said softly, her voice trembling just enough to seem innocent. She didn't want Isabella to suspect anything, not yet. Mason reached over and squeezed Emma's hand. "It's going to be a beautiful day," he said, his voice full of warmth.
"I'm so proud of you, sweetheart.
"I know this hasn't been easy, but you've handled it so well." Emma felt a lump rise in her throat. She wanted to tell him the truth right then and there, to shout at the top of her lungs, but she held back. She had to wait for the perfect moment.
The morning of the wedding dawned bright and beautiful.
Sunlight streamed through the windows, illuminating the house in a golden glow. For most people, it was the perfect day for a celebration, but for Emma, it felt like the calm before the storm. The house was bustling with activity. Florists were arranging flowers, caterers were setting up trays of food, and guests were arriving in waves, dressed in their finest attire. Emma sat on the edge of her bed, clutching the USB drive in her hand. Her heart pounded as she rehearsed what she was going to say. She couldn't afford to mess this up. This was her one chance to expose Isabella.
From down the hall, Emma could hear Isabella's laughter echoing through the house.
It was light and cheerful, the kind of laugh that made people think she was happy, kind, and in love. The wedding was being held in the backyard under a beautiful arch covered in white roses. Chairs were lined up neatly, and the guests were seated, chatting and laughing as they waited for the ceremony to start. Mason stood at the altar, his face glowing with happiness. He looked dashing in his suit, his eyes sparkling with the kind of joy Emma hadn't seen in years. Isabella made her entrance with a flourish, her wedding gown trailing behind her as she walked down the aisle. The guests gasped at her beauty, whispering to one another about how perfect she looked. Isabella's smile was radiant, but Emma could see the flicker of coldness in her eyes when she glanced at Emma. As the officiant began to speak, Emma's hands grew clammy, and her heart raced. She looked around at the sea of smiling faces. They were all oblivious to the truth, all blind to the danger that lay ahead. Emma clenched her fists. She couldn't wait any longer. The officiant's voice rang out, "If anyone here has any reason why these two should not be wed, speak now or forever hold your peace." The guests laughed softly, clearly expecting silence. But then, from the second row, a small voice broke through the quiet. "Stop." All heads turned as Emma stood up. Her legs wobbled, but her voice was strong. "You can't marry her, Dad.
She's lying to you." A wave of shocked whispers rippled through the crowd.
Mason blinked, his expression shifting from confusion to concern.
"Emma, what's going on?"
Isabella's smile froze, and for the first time, a flicker of fear crossed her face. "Sweetheart," she said, her voice syrupy and fake, "what are you talking about? Did something happen?" Emma ignored her and turned to her father.
"She doesn't love you, Daddy. She's pretending."
"She's been lying to you this whole time." Mason stepped toward her gently. "Emma," he said, his voice calm but filled with concern, "we've talked about this. I know this is a big change, but Isabella loves us. She's been trying her best."
"No," Emma shouted, tears streaming down her face. "She doesn't love us."
"She's been lying." Emma reached into her pocket and pulled out the USB drive. "I can prove it," she said, her voice trembling. "I heard her talking to someone on the phone. She's working with someone named William. She's planning to take all your money, and she's going to hurt you." The crowd fell silent. Mason's face turned pale, and Isabella's eyes narrowed. "This is ridiculous," Isabella said, her voice sharp.
"Now she's just a child.
She doesn't know what she's talking about." But Emma wasn't done. "I saw the messages on her phone," she said, her voice growing stronger. "She's working with William. They're planning to take everything you have, and she's cheating on you with him." Gasps erupted from the crowd. Guests exchanged horrified glances, and Mason staggered back as if the words had physically struck him. "What are you saying, Emma?" he asked, his voice breaking. "I'm saying she doesn't love you, Daddy," Emma said, holding out the USB drive.
Frühlingsson hier.
The messages, the recordings, even pictures of her with William. "Please, you have to believe me."
Isabellas Komposure kräkt.
Her hands clenched into fists, and her voice rose in anger.
This is in Sahne. She's lying.
She's jealous and doesn't want to share you. Can't you see what she's doing? Mason looked at her, his eyes filled with doubt. "Is it true?" he asked quietly. "Are you working with someone named William?" Isabella stammered, her face turning red. "Of course not, Mason.
You know M.A.
You know I would never." "Show them the proof," a voice from the crowd said. Mason asked one of the guests to plug the USB drive into a laptop one of the wedding planners had been using for the music. The screen lit up with the photos of Isabella and William. The messages followed, each one more damning than the last. The final blow came when Emma played one of the recordings.
Isabellas voice filled the air. "Don't worry. Once the wedding's over, I'll handle everything."
He won't see it coming. The crowd erupted into chaos. Guests shouted in shock, and Mason's face hardened as he looked at Isabella. "How could you?" he whispered, his voice trembling. The air was electric with tension as the guests erupted into chaos. People whispered, pointed, and gasped at the images and recordings displayed on the laptop screen. Isabella's carefully constructed facade was crumbling faster than she could repair it. "No, this isn't what it looks like," Isabella yelled, stepping forward and slamming the laptop shut. Her voice, usually smooth and controlled, was now sharp and desperate.
"She's lying.
She doctored those photos, those messages. This is a setup." Mason stared at her, his face pale and unreadable. "Isabella," he said, his voice low and trembling, "what is she talking about?"
"Tell M.A. the truth."
Isabella turned to him, her eyes wide and pleading.
"Mason, you know M.A. You know I.D. never hurt you."
This is just a misunderstanding." Emma stepped forward, her small frame trembling, but her voice steady.
"It's not a lie, Daddy.
I heard her talking to William about taking all your money. I found the poison in her closet.
She doesn't love you.
She's working with your business competitors, and she's planning to hurt you." The guests gasped louder, their disbelief turning to outrage. A murmur spread through the crowd as people began piecing the clues together. Isabella's carefully controlled mask slipped further. Her hands clenched into fists, and her voice grew sharper. "Enough of this nonsense," she snapped. "Mason, are you really going to believe a 12-year-old over me? After everything we've been through?" The room seemed to freeze in that moment. Every guest, every pair of eyes, was fixed on Isabella. The silence was heavy, suffocating. And for the first time since Emma had spoken, Isabella looked genuinely shaken. Her mask of confidence was slipping, and she knew it.
Isabellas Expression darkened.
Her shoulders stiffened, and for the first time, her true self began to show. The sweetness in her voice was gone, replaced by something colder, sharper. "This is ridiculous," she snapped.
"Do you hear how crazy this sounds?"
But Mason didn't look convinced. His gaze was hard, cold, and unwavering. "Answer the question, Isabella," he said, his voice like steel. "Are you working with William?" Of course not," Isabella stammered, her voice breaking. "I don't even know who that is."
"Stop talking,"
Mason said, his voice rising for the first time. The room fell silent again, the authority in his tone cutting through Clara's protests.
"Emma, clicked on another one of the recordings."
Clara's voice filled the air, cold and calculating.
"Don't worry, William.
Once the wedding's over, I'll have access to everything, the accounts, the business.
It'll all be ours.
And then we can finally get rid of him." The crowd erupted into murmurs. Disbelief etched on every face. Mason's hands clenched into fists as he played another recording. Make sure you have the papers ready for him to sign during the honeymoon. He's so in love, he won't even read them.
Ze vispas greluda.
Some guests looked horrified, others looked furious. Isabella's carefully curated image was falling apart in front of everyone. Mason turned to Isabella, his face a mix of heartbreak and fury. "How could you do this?" he demanded, his voice trembling. "After everything we've been through?
After everything I gave you? How could you?"
Isabella took a step back, her eyes darting around the room as if searching for an escape. "Mason, But he cut her off. "Save it," he snapped.
You lied to me.
"You manipulated me. You were going to get rid of me." His voice cracked on the last words, the reality of the situation hitting him like a tidal wave. Realizing she had no way out, Isabella's demeanor changed completely. The fake tears and sweet smiles were gone, replaced by pure venom. "You're such a fool, Mason," she spat, her voice dripping with disdain. "You think this was about love?
You think he cared about you?
You were just a means to an end. All of this," she gestured around the room, "was just a stepping stone. And now, thanks to your brat of a daughter, it's all ruined." The guests gasped, shocked by her sudden shift. Mason looked like he had been punched in the gut. "I trusted you," he said, his voice barely a whisper.
I let you into my life, into my daughter's life. Isabella sneered.
"And that was your biggest mistake." Unknowingly to her, Mason had dialed 911 and called the police earlier, just as she turned to leave.
The sound of sirens filled the air.
His call to the police had been perfectly timed. Moments later, officers entered the backyard, their presence commanding immediate attention. One of the officers stepped forward. "Isabella Stevenson, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, attempted murder, and embezzlement."
Isabella's eyes widened in panic.
"You have no proof," she screamed, thrashing as the officers grabbed her arms.
"This is all lies. You can't arrest me."
But her protests fell on deaf ears. The officers led her away, her screams fading into the distance as the guests watched in stunned silence. Mason dropped to his knees in front of Emma, tears streaming down his face. "I'm so sorry," he said, his voice breaking. "I should have listened to you.
I should have trusted you."
Emma wrapped her arms around him, her own tears flowing freely. "I just didn't want to lose you, Daddy," she whispered. "I just wanted to keep you safe." "You did," Mason said, pulling her close.
You saved me. You saved both of us.
The guests slowly began to disperse, their murmurs filled with disbelief and awe. Many of them stopped to thank Emma, praising her bravery and determination. But Emma didn't care about their words. All she cared about was that her father was safe. Mason wasn't the type to shy away from difficult conversations. He knew he had to mend his relationship with Emma, and he wasn't going to let another day go by without doing so. Knocking gently on her door, he waited until he heard her faint, "Come in." He stepped inside, his heart heavy as he saw her sitting on her bed, hugging a pillow tightly. "Emma," he began softly, "I don't even know where to start. I should have listened to you. I should have seen the signs, and I'm so sorry that I didn't." Emma looked up, her eyes filled with unshed tears. "Dad, I was so scared," she said quietly. "Isabella wasn't just mean. She was dangerous. She threatened me, made me feel like I was the problem. And when you didn't believe me, I thought I'd lose you too." Mason sat beside her, taking her hand in his. "You didn't lose me, Emma. If anything, I almost lost you because I was too blind to see what was happening. But I promise you this, I will never let anything like this happen again.
You come first, always."
For the first time in weeks, Emma felt a weight lift off her shoulders. It wasn't going to be easy, but it was a start. In the days that followed, The evidence Emma had gathered helped uncover a much larger scheme. Isabella and William were part of an organized network targeting wealthy individuals and businesses. Thanks to Emma, the authorities were able to dismantle the operation and bring everyone involved to justice. Mason, though heartbroken, was grateful. He vowed to spend the rest of his life making it up to Emma, cherishing the bond they had, and ensuring she always felt safe and loved. As for Emma, she finally felt at peace. The nightmare was over, and she knew her mother would have been proud of her. Together, she and her father began rebuilding their lives, stronger than ever. Months later, as Emma and Mason sat on the porch watching the sunset, Mason turned to his daughter with a smile. "You know," he said, "for all the pain Isabella caused, she did one thing right. She showed me just how incredible you are."
Emma Laukhet, rolling her eyes.
"It's about time you figured that out," she teased, but her smile said it all. She had forgiven him, and they were ready to move forward together. The ordeal with Isabella had been a test of their strength, but it had also brought them closer than ever. They had faced the storm and come out stronger, ready to take on whatever challenges life had in store. Sometimes, the greatest battles we face aren't with others, but with ourselves. But with love, courage, and a little faith, we can overcome even the darkest of times. If this story moved you, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and join us for more powerful tales of resilience, truth, and hope. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it, and remember, you have the power to change your story, one step at a time.